Old Times on Captiva. Now you tell us when you came here.
Came back here in the fall of 45.
Right. And you built your house then, or how did
We
you
bought that house up at the
on the Gulf?
on the Gulf in 45, and we lived in it till 52, when we, after having several efforts of holding it, seawalls and so forth, we gave it up and tore it down.
How long did you live in it before you realized that the erosion had doomed it?
Almost immediately.
Oh dear.
But Colonel, you see, was a waterways engineer, and he thought that he could find some way. And he talked to General Pick, who was head of the engineers at that time, and they had been working together for a good many years. And so he sent all the information up there to General Pick, and he wrote back and told him, what did any ordinary colonel mean by building on a waterfront? That he ought to know better, and that he didn't believe that there was anything that would save that beach.
That's very interesting, because after all these years of people trying to save beaches in all kind of ways, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago saying that people are questioning, why should the government not only pay to keep people living in these dangerous areas and keep paying, but providing them with this insurance that when they got washed away, the government gave them the money to build again in the same rotten location as they'd been before. And they think it's almost time this got stopped.
General Pick also told Colonel that he believed that the only possible way that might work was to put in a wall straight out from South Seas west, 1 mile, not less.
Oh my.
And that if that wouldn't work, then nothing would. That it might throw the currents out far enough to miss the islands.
But that far, a mile, which is
A
really,
mile.
that would be prohibitively expensive, I would think.
That's right. So Colonel wrote to him and told him what his idea was of what they could do to save that particular beach that our place was on. What's his name? Mary Bailey's place was on there.
And a Dr. Bish?
Dr. Bish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Bish's place was not so constructed that it would withstand
Oh,
the
the waves.
Yeah.
Was it just a constant erosion, or was it just big storms?
We did not have any big storms then.
Just a constant eating
Just
away?
a constant, and so Colonel put in a regular seawall. Then when we saw that wasn't going to work, he came back, I would say, maybe 20 feet. And he put in almost like,
A groin?
no, they were larger. They were more like telephone poles.
Oh.
And he sunk them clear down until they were at the level of the land.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't try to save any land.
I see.
We tried to save going
The
down.
sand underneath.
Well, when I went home, I went to my place in Colorado, I got a call from Colonel that the seawall had gone out. muddy box flew me over. And it was just one, like a huge snake along there. And they just waved.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't anything to do with that. I went to several people to see if they could move the house. Well, the house was 150 feet one way and 120 the other. And there was several fireplaces in it, so that they had to destroy three. They destroyed all but the three walls to each room,
Oh, I see.
and they couldn't move it. So I thought about it and worked on it in my head and decided that I would tear it down. And I had bought this land, not knowing what, just as an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it down here, and one, I didn't want to use that word. That's my,
A Negro?
yeah.
What was his name, you mean?
Yeah, the last name.
I don't know.
Buddy and Oxford.
Gavin.
Gavin. Buddy, Gavin, and I tore that house down alone,
Board by board?
board by board, and marked everything. And we brought it down on regular
Barge?
nigger
Yeah.
bar. No, not a bar.
A truck?
Truck.
Oh.
Time after time we came down and put it all out here, and then I drew the plans for that house, and we rebuilt it. And I got a carpenter for about 4 weeks to help. And outside of that, Buddy and I did.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. You almost built that yourself?
We did build it.
Oh, how about that? And I suppose in those days there was no such thing as flood insurance, so you
There
couldn't,
was no flood
nothing to draw on
insurance.
for that, was there?
No, nothing. No, Colonel.
Hoped you could. Oh, sure.
So I picked it up.
Yeah.
He said, let it go.
Mhm.
He said, let it go for another nickel.
Had you bought it ready built, or had you built it
Yes,
from scratch?
Yes. It was built.
Oh, I thought you had built it yourself. But,
One day I built it.
oh, you bought it
I
ready.
never liked that house. Never liked it.
Mhm. When you redid it, did you change it a little, or?
Oh, yes, it's only up to 2/3 as much as what before.
I see.
And I had enough left to build the outhouses here.
For heaven's sakes. That's interesting.
So, but I've worked awful hard.
Right, but now some of the people there just lost their place. What happened to Dr. Bish's house? Just went? Just washed away? Now that house that is still standing, that Ena Watson lived in a
Yeah.
long time, was that part of Dr. Bish's or part of your place?
No, that was their, you might say, housekeepers.
Oh, the
place.
servants' quarters.
Yeah, servants.
I see.
And, but it is way back. It was, I would say, 20 to 30 feet of that beach is gone. And I've often wished I could go out there and find
Your marker?
fireplace.
Oh,
The fireplace was there.
Still
up
left
there.
there.
For
Oh,
a long time.
yes.
I'd like to find that, just for fun, to see how much it has really.
Well, now, when you
Okay.
bought the place, was it sitting on the beach or was it on land with beach ahead of it?
Oh, lots of beach,
Yeah,
50 feet.
50 feet of beach. Hmm. Who did you buy it from? Oh, that was the name you
Yes.
couldn't remember.
Woman.
Well, it doesn't matter. But none of the others bothered moving their houses, did they? They just let them go?
They depended on Colonel to
Mhm.
save. And Colonel, he was a waterways engineer. He did everything he knew how, and he
Couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
So isn't it a little foolish now for these erosion boards to talk about spending $6 million and saving it?
Absolutely.
They can't save that.
And Colonel went to the trouble after we got all the information from General Pig, and Colonel went up there to Washington once on that thing. When he came back, he tried to tell the organization,
Civic Association? The Civic Association?
he tried to tell them what Dr. Pick,
General Pick.
Pick had told him,
Mhm.
and that nobody paid attention to him.
Well, it just seems that they tried and tried and spent money
They
and money.
didn't want to think that they
Couldn't
use
save
theirs.
it. Right.
And people, for a long time, I could say there was 2 years, not one soul ever said to us, "We're sorry that your house is gone."
Mm.
They just thought that it couldn't happen to us.
No.
That was the attitude that
Mhm.
everybody took.
That you were just sort of out of luck up where you were, but it
Yeah.
couldn't happen to them. Hmm. Well, now you built that little house for Mary Bailey then, didn't you? That
But down the road.
down the road. Yeah,
The one
yeah.
that she sold.
Yeah, she sold it to
Yeah.
Bun and Betty, to the
Yeah.
Kendricks.
And
Anyway, Bun and Betty Day, Gillette. She sold it to the Gillettes.
Oh, no.
No?
That wasn't the one I built.
Oh, I see.
No.
Oh,
She bought that from a boy
oh.
of the people that had the this is why I didn't want to do this.
Well,
I can't finish
Susan,
this.
it doesn't matter at all.
I have
You know.
some.
Anyway, Mary Bailey had a different house from that one,
Oh.
than the
yeah.
Gillette house. That was came afterward.
No, she sold that house to Gillette,
I see.
but she built
Another
a
one,
builder one
farther up.
down here,
That's right.
where
Next to
Penn.
Penn and Parker Mills.
I
Right.
built that one for her.
Yes, yes.
But no, that was who was the florist that lived down on First Street?
Paul Everett? No, I don't know. A florist.
Anyway, she
I see.
and she built and Mary bought it from him.
And then Mary sold it to the Gillettes, and then Isabel Gillette gave it to her daughter Betty Day.
Is she gone?
She still lived, who? Isabel? Yes, she died about a year or two ago. But her daughter, Betty, and her husband still live there. Yeah.
'Cause they fixed it up. So.
They have. They've added
Yeah.
quite a bit to it. It's very attractive.
They had,
Well, you have built lots of houses and helped other people decorate. Was this your profession before you came? No?
just picked it up.
For heaven's sakes. Well, how many places down here now have you assisted in, at least with their...
Well,
I know you built Mary Bailey's little house, and didn't you help Bob and Betty Adams with theirs?
yes.
Yes.
Theirs was 4 houses up here. And I built Dr. We built down here.
Severing House?
No. He lived up on Comac.
Oh, I know, Dr. Malone.
I built that house.
Oh, you did?
And designed it and all.
Mhm.
And
That house is for sale now.
I imagine. they
She
would-
died last year.
Oh, did she?
Yes, yes,
Died before he did.
Yes.
He was so much older.
yes. She died last year, so it is for sale. I don't know whether he's down here this winter or not.
I usually get a letter or two from his son during the season, and I didn't get any this year.
Mhm.
But I can't write to listen to him on Friday.
Mhm.
So I've lost out on so many things.
But didn't you do a lot of decorating for people too, other
Oh.
than just the building?
Oh,
I know
yeah.
my mother always said, "Oh, she's the interior decorator for Captiva."
The boathouse, yeah.
Dean Darling.
I did his over, and I did it, but I always told him that I didn't want to do it because you couldn't tell him anything. He did it his way.
I see.
And we had lots of fun over it because I said, well, what do you want?
Mhm.
Nobody can tell you anything. And we were awfully good friends.
Mhm.
He's the one that started me in pottery. And,
Oh, is he?
oh, yeah.
How did he? I thought this was just an old hobby of yours. From
No, he was one that got me into it.
How did he do that?
Well, he saw me. I was sculpting, so my grandson had some of this embroidered green stuff. What did you call it?
Clay, modeling clay.
Yeah. And he said, Grandma, what do I do with this? And I said, well, you wait till after dinner, and Grandma will try to show you. So we took it, and I didn't have any tools or anything. And I made a Grecian head about that high with a fancy ornamental top to her. And he came in after I'd done it. He brought me some broadlegs. And he came in and he went over the fireplace and he said he recognized that form clay. It was a nasty color. And he said, who did this, Susan? And I evaded him as long as I could. And I said, well, I did. I tried to show Skip what to do with his clay. Well, damn blew up.
Oh.
And he said, where'd you take your art training? I said, I never took any art training. Didn't have such a thing as in a little town, 3,500 that I was raised in.
Mhm.
So the next day he brought me down 10 pounds of clay. And on it was written, I'll be back in a week to see what you've done.
Oh.
And so we sat there. Came down and he said, well, where is it? I said, where's what thing? And what'd you do with that clay I brought you? I said, now look, take your playthings and go home. I'm not going to make a fool out of myself. I never did anything like this before in my life. And if that little thing I made turned out all right, it was luck. He turned around and he said, oh, he could be meaner.
No.
He turned around and he said, I'll be back in 1 week and I'll expect to see something. So the Colonel said to me just the night before about the week was up. He said, I've been thinking about it. Dave Darling's not the kind of person that gives his materials and away unless he thinks that you can do something. I don't think you're playing square with him. Well, that made sense. So I sat down that evening at 4 o'clock. I had this St. Francis that I sewed so many of, all
Oh.
done. And that was when I started
Yes,
saying,
what did you do then? Make a mold of it and cast it again?
Reproduce it.
Yes, yes. Well, are most of the things that you sold in your ceramic shop designs that you had started from scratch with your own modeling and made your own molds?
And even the sea grapes that have been so.
Oh, you did that. And that Madonna manger set that we use in the chapel at Christmas time?
I made that.
You made that. Oh, that's a lovely thing. Everybody gasps when they see that for the first time.
I don't want this one. You know, a bunch of house,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
do everything.
Uh-huh.
I offered that to them twice, and they refused.
Hmm. For heaven's sake.
That's been refused, it didn't take till the third time.
Oh, well,
But I made it for it, and I didn't, there wasn't any place else for it. I couldn't see why they wouldn't take it.
well, I'll tell you, it has been used for the last 3 winters that I know of, and people just gasp when they see it because it's done very simply with just that there, with a little blue around it, you know, and the red poinsettias flanking it below. It is stunning.
I'm proud of that.
Well, you should be proud of it. It's a lovely thing. And I never see it without thinking Susan Karr made that.
Made something else too.
Let's talk, before you get too tired, a little bit about beginning the chapel. Were you
Well-
in on the beginning of that, or?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
John Sims.
Wait 1 minute. I want to just be sure this is on loud enough, all right? Okay, now we're taping again. All right. Now I think we're in business. I think maybe this
John
will...
Sims from Baltimore came down here for a vacation. And Bishop Remington of the Episcopal Church was a very good friend of his. He invited him to come also. Then John wanted Bishop Remington to give a sermon.
I see.
And the place was in terrible shape. We hadn't gotten it very far then. And so they came, and Bishop Remington put his robes on out in the jungle.
Oh.
And we had the service, and it was lovely. I don't remember who gave John Sims the right
Permission?
to, yes,
Mhm.
permission to do it.
Wasn't it at the time didn't it belong to the Methodist Church?
No, it belonged to the Methodist Church, all right. That
Oh.
comes in later,
Oh, I see.
though. And
It was just an empty schoolhouse at the time?
it was an empty schoolhouse, and Mrs. What was the fisherman's wife?
Belton Johnson?
His wife run a Sunday school in it,
I see.
and she had newspapers, pictures of
Oh.
all over it. And so that, I don't know where I came in at that time, but that afternoon at our house up in Captiva, here come John Sims and Bishop Remington. And they wanted to know why we couldn't have church there all the time, or do something. That Bishop Remington thought it was terrible to have a congregation as large as this area was, and no churchmen there. We didn't have anything. See, there wasn't any Catholic church. There wasn't any.
Nothing on Sanibel either?
Well, that one was
Community
down there,
church.
but it wasn't going.
I
I
see.
mean, it was law.
Mm-hmm.
So I and John Sims thought I was one to do it. Well, we did. That was where we started.
Hmm.
And we got a minister. Then their father came in right at that time. In fact, I would say that he had as much to do with it as I did.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've always given him credit for running, because I couldn't have done it financially or otherwise alone, because many a time.
So let's put his name in here. Charles Alt.
All
Okay.
right, Charles Auld.
So somebody
betcha.
will know who my father
You
we're
betcha.
talking about.
And I'm strong. I've told you that many a time.
I know.
That I've always thought that he didn't get enough credit, because there was many a time. I'll bet you for the first 2 years, and I think your mother, if she could remember, would tell you the same thing, that he and I put in 2/3 of the money that we had to pay the little old minister, Dr.
Kennedy,
Kennedy.
to come over from Fort Myers.
And another person deserves a lot of credit was Dorothy Whittakin. He came over on the boat, and she took him in and kept him and fed him every Sunday.
She was running Gulfview Restaurant then, wasn't
That's
she?
right.
Yes.
And she was on that board.
Mhm.
She was one of the 5. Now, Beulah I put on because you know the story of her grandmother, how
Yes.
she gave the
land.
She gave the land, and several times when the church was blown down or the roof was to be peeled off, she herself paid for having that put on. And I felt that Beulah should be recognized for that.
Right. As a recognition really for her grandmother.
Right.
Yes.
And I always insisted on Beulah and being on that board.
Mm-hmm.
In the first place, I made up my mind that it had to represent 3 different types of people. It had to represent the natives, which Beulah was
Yes.
one.
Yes.
It had to represent we working people who had enough and not too much.
Mm-hmm.
We had to give our service as
Right.
well as
As your money.
and of course we had to have the wealthy people to help pay the bills.
Right.
And I always kept, and I think that they've let that go away the last couple of years.
Well, I think they're rather getting back to that. You'd be surprised.
Yeah,
You know,
well, I know.
this year we have George Tuttle, who owns the store.
I don't know.
And you see, there are new people coming in that you don't know, but we do have quite a representation of the working people now. So,
Well, because after all, they're the backbone.
that's right.
And so Anne, to have more recognition than he's ever had, because I would have given up many a time if he hadn't have bought.
Well, my father was never one to look for recognition for himself then nor now would he
I
want
know,
it.
but that's all the more reason he should have it.
Well, Susan, as long as you and I love him and remember him, that's
Bet I
about
do.
as much as he would ask for.
But I did, and then our men went down there. Now I might tell you a little bit about how, I don't know, you know, the truth of that church isn't out.
Isn't it?
No,
No?
there's a lot of things.
Want me turned off for a
Um,
minute?
I think you'd better.
I don't want to lose it, though.
Well, turn it off and you can, we can turn.
So you went to Sarasota
I
to...
went for the acquisition of the church. I felt that we should not pay out more. There was so much needed in the way of
repairs,
repairs and so forth.
refurbishings.
that we shouldn't spend any money unless we owned it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went for the board meeting, and there were about 10 men there, and me. And when I got all through, I got up and I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You know, you have a dedicated cemetery that you have a deed for, and it is in terrible repair, and
Mm-hmm.
that you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Now, we won't buy the cemetery, but we will accept it if we buy the church and take the responsibility of keeping it up in a modest fashion,
Mm-hmm.
because
It's a historical landmark.
that's right. And so when I told him, I just stood up and I said, you have to be ashamed of yourself. And that was when they broke.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the church. I can't.
Did you have to buy it, or did they
Oh,
give it
yes.
to you? You had to buy it from the Methodist
yes.
Church?
I paid for it before I came away for fear they.
Change their mind. How
Yeah.
much did they charge you for it? They should have given it to anybody who was willing to
That's right.
take care of it.
They wouldn't. I don't know, frankly, but I think $400 keeps coming in my head.
$400.
But I don't know that it was there. I would never put that on.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I paid for it, and then they
But it wasn't any huge
no
thousands, no.
no.
More in the $100.
Yeah.
Yes. But it was a pretty disreputable building.
Oh, it was a sight.
Of course, the land now is valuable.
Yeah, well,
If there's anything
what
left.
they said to me was they might as it grew, they might want to put in a church of their own. I said, you've got a Methodist church down there on Sanibel. Do you know how far Sanibel is from Captiva?
Hmm.
I said, it's only a stone's throw. I told him and I said, you don't need two. And we do need it.
Mm-hmm. They were good for you, Susan.
Well, that's why it hurts me to see them get this thing all mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have not. I can't tell you. My memory isn't good enough now. But they've got any number of things, like when the church was acquired and things like that, that are not the right dates.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, you gave me some correspondence. When I took over your treasurer's
Yeah.
job, there was some correspondence, which is still there, which would have those dates, and it had correspondence with the bishop and so on.
Yeah.
So I think somewhere the right dates are available.
Well, they're not in.
Not up on the plaque, though.
No.
Hmm. I think, though, perhaps those dates on the plaque were more when it was incorporated under the new charter, not the work that had gone on before that.
Well, they had it too early
I see.
instead of too late.
Too late. Oh, I see.
They had it like 1947 or something, when it wasn't until after the 50s.
Oh, I see.
3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will personally go through that
Yeah.
stuff and see that this is changed on whatever.
Well, yeah, I think it should
All
be,
right,
because
yes.
and I know they had some kind of a meeting for the anniversary of the church, and they were off 3 years.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, now, were you the first chairman of the board?
Now, this is the way that thing worked. I first organized the civic organization by Aunt Lena proud of me. And I took the chairmanship for the first year. Then I made out like the church and school and the
cemetery.
Yeah, all different kinds of things. And I didn't have anybody for the church and school. And so I talked to Elizabeth Beals, tried to talk her into it.
This is Betsy Steyert's mother.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she wasn't the fine person, though, that you think she was. And Doc Pete admits it, so we understand.
I guess they like us, all had our shortcomings.
And so I finally talked Elizabeth. I said, now look, you take the chairmanship of the church and school.
As part of the Civic Association
As
chairmanship.
part of the Civic Association.
I see.
And you be my running. You do, she loved to run errands, and to be in on everything. And I said, I can't carry all of it, but if you'll take it, then I'll give you the
chairmanship.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so she, for 1 year, so she took it, and her name went on as chairman.
I see.
But I run it. She didn't. And then, the next year,
at this time, you mean the chapel was being run as one arm of the Civic Association?
Absolutely.
It had no board of its own?
No.
I see.
So that's all there was Elizabeth and me, you might say. So when the first year rolled around, I had made up my mind, and that was the reason that Aunt Lena wanted me to to organize it, was because she had tried to hold a little. This ought to be very interesting to, if anybody'd ever do it and do it right. Aunt Lena was trying to hold a little group of women's, women organization together, because that's all there was. There wasn't any men's organization.
Sort of a ladies' aid?
It was kind of a ladies' aid. And she'd been trying to get rid of it, but she wanted an organization of something that if we had a disaster, there'd be a group of people that would have some authority. That was what Aunt Lena was after. She wanted somebody.
It was very foresighted.
Yes, she was a brilliant woman. And so she kept trying to get me to take over this. And I said, Aunt Lena, I don't see any thing that appeals to me. A bunch of women getting together and chewing the fat. And I said, now if there was men to take over the real
business
end. And she said, well, that's what she'd always had in mind, hoping they could get a nucleus of an organization. Well, and she said, will you do it if we bring men in? I said, yes, I'll do it. Well, that was where I came in on, but nobody knows that I had anything to do with it anymore.
For heaven's sake.
So
that was the beginning of the Civic Association.
That was the beginning of the Civic Association.
Oh.
So then when the year was up, then I suggested to him that we bring in more men for officers. That I thought that if
But there are so many business things that they're more skilled in.
Yes, and
I hate to admit this,
well, that's
because I'm a great women's libber.
well,
and
I'm not.
No, yes, you are too.
No, I'm not.
You are one because you have made your womanhood work just as strongly as if you were a man.
But I don't believe in it.
Well, yes, you do, but you think you don't. But anyway, we both like to be waited on, and I want the men there, and I'm all for.
Well, when
they surely do have a great deal more business experience.
To John Sims and asked him to take the road and beach, he said, "Well, why do I have to do it, Susan? I came down here to retire and to quit."
Where did John Sims live? Was he a Captivian?
He lived at Harwood's house.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Harwood and our minister lived there before him.
Okay.
And I said, "I want you to be," he said, "Well, why do I have to do it?" And I said, "Because you're the only one of that whole outfit over there in Fort Myers that can talk up." You see, he was an attorney, a very brilliant attorney.
I see.
And talk up to them. And we can't, no woman can get anywhere.
Right.
So he finally took it, and he and Ding Darling joined hands in doing it. And the way we got this bridge was that the fellow over on Pine Island that had so much influence, I think his name's on that bridge, was on that bridge. I don't know what they call it now, but he was a...
I remember there was a man's on the rolls. It's got some kind of a name.
Yeah, and
I've forgotten it now.
So they went over to the two of them went over there to his place, and they found road equipment and tiles and stuff. A city property
I see.
that he had put on his place. And John Sims walked into his office in Fort Myers, and he threw down his papers, these pictures, and he says, "What are you going to do about it?" Now that's the way we got the bridge.
By catching him with his hand in the till?
Yes.
Isn't that funny?
Now, I tried to get men like that, see, and they did it.
Right.
And so when it came to the second year, I refused to go on. I said, "It's a man's job." So we had the meeting, and different ones. Of course, they offered me the chairmanship and the vice chairman, and you know, no. Finally, I said, "Look, I'll tell you when you come to something I want, and if you don't want to give it to me, you don't have to." So when the church came up, I said, "That's what I want."
I see.
That's where my interest was.
Yes. So that's how it came about, really, through the Civic Association.
We had to have some nucleus
Right.
to depend on,
Right.
and could say to Fort Myers, "This is a representative of our island."
Yes. Well, that's great. And that thinking, I think, still permeates the Civic Association today, that
Well,
this
course.
is the voice of the people,
Of course.
the only voice we have.
Of course, I've always tried to, well, would I say, be humble about things. I've never tried to. You know, I've never.
You've never tried to puff yourself.
No.
No.
And when I think of what I have done and what the things that I did that were worthwhile.
Of course. Why do you think I'm here putting this down? Because I know you're the source of so much inspiration on this island and the source of so much history.
Do you know why we have that that no solicitations, no, except, do you know, did I ever tell you?
No, you mean in the chapel, that we have no,
Yes.
what's the word?
You're supposed to draw on.
Signing up pledges.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why that is. Show you how long my memory is. I was about 9 years old, and we were given our Sunday school money to go to Sunday school and all. My father had money, but I noticed Mother didn't go to church anymore. And there wasn't anything going. And one day I heard her say to Dad, it was on a Sunday, I heard her say, I think we'll go over to Mr. and Mrs. Durr's this afternoon. I hear that the solicitation men are coming, and I don't want to be here. And I thought, that's awful funny. I was only about 9 years old, and I thought about that and thought about that. Mother didn't want to give any money to the church. And all of a sudden it came to me, there wasn't any money.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so keen about it that I made up my mind that if God wanted a church in a place, He'd see that there was money for it, that you didn't have to drag it out of people.
Right. Well, I think that this has been our strong point in the chapel, that we have never asked people to subscribe to it, and yet whenever there was a need and we said we haven't got enough to meet the bills, somebody was moved to give it.
That's right.
And that's the way it should be.
And I did that in memory of my mother and father.
Well, that was nice. But I remember my father also saying, and I wasn't down here at the time, we are all members of churches up north, and we are subscribing to that and supporting them, and so we can't support two churches other than in a part-time way. We'll each give according to
our
what
need.
we have to give. Right?
But that was where I got the idea that if God wanted a church, He'd see that there was enough money there.
Well, He must have wanted one down here because it has
right.
flourished.
That's right.
Yes.
And I honestly believe that.
Yes, and I believe that this little chapel has had a great deal to do with the spiritual life of the people on Captiva. It's meant a great deal to many people.
And I dearly love it, but I can't go anymore. I can't.
Well, I think you've paid your dues. All right. I think there comes a time when in a job they retire you. They say, well, you've paid your dues to the company. Now you don't have to work anymore for your money.
I don't like them making,
An honorary member?
Yeah. I told you that.
I know you did. And at the time when you left the board, I said Susan does not want to be voted an honorary member for several reasons.
That's right.
But if you that held out. But you realize last year I was not on the board, and they voted this when I wasn't there to explain your reasoning. But aren't you glad it's there?
Do you know why I said when they put the plaque or whatever it was up for the original members? Why I did it was because of your father. I never felt that he was given the credit. I overshadowed him. Women do that, you know that.
Sure.
And he was always in the background helping me.
Right.
And I said, yes, if Charlie Alt is going up, I'll go along with you.
Well,
and I meant it.
Well, that pleased me that it was up there.
You betcha.
Yes, so I'm glad it's there. But then last year, when they decided to add you to the honorary members, I wasn't on the board last year to talk, but I'm glad I wasn't, because now you're up there where you should be.
Oh, that's silly.
Well, okay.
Listen, anything that you do in the Lord's work isn't supposed to be thanked.
No, and I have a feeling if you get your thanks here, then you don't get it later on. It's you either spend it now or later.
I've had so many people kind to me and know that I did this, that I never could feel. I have trouble really feeling humble enough.
Well, this is why when you say my father never got the recognition he should have had, he would have been the last one to want it. He was the most humble of men.
That's right.
He was one of the most generous and kindliest people, but he didn't want anything.
Many a time he went in his pocket and I went in mine, we'd say, well, how much?
How much more do we need to pay him?
The little old man only got $15, Sunday.
Oh.
And we had to make up money.
Yes. Well, where did you get the money then to build the parsonage and so on?
That's something I'm out of.
Yeah. Was not your field.
No, and I objected to it. I told Pearsall, he had lived here for several years, that and he was on the board. And I said, now I'm going to tell you something, and I'm never going to tell anybody else. It's up to you to see that the church group know it. That is not being built on, it is being built on
cemetery.
The cemetery part of its property. And it's a dedicated property. Therefore, it can never be sold. Never can they sell that church.
No.
And I said, now I'm telling you this, I know it to be a fact, and it's up to you to carry it on. Because those old ladies that did that, they'd had me tied up in the attic,
Sure.
because they just hated,
They wanted that, and they were going to have it no matter how.
Well, I said they couldn't. Well, of course, when it first came up, I said, no, you can't put it on a dedicated property. In the first place, they shouldn't have done it because of that. In the second place, the church, we're going to have to someday have a new church.
Right.
And we needed all of that space for church, not church and...
Right.
And it should never have been put there in the first place. They could have gone down the street to Helfer, down there on that.
Well, where Beulah was subdividing her property there, they could have bought several lots there.
They could have bought
right there where Hempel's house is.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think you could have bought that for a few $1,000s
That's
at
right.
that time.
And but no, they were going to do it their way. So I faded out. Russell was sick at that time, and I wasn't on the board for about 5 years. And
by the way, Susan, when we cleared the cemetery this spring, there's somebody there named Emma Karr. Is that any relative? There's a gravestone in that cemetery that says Emma Karr, Karr. Yes.
Lord, I don't know, but there is an Emma Karr.
There's an Emma Karr in that cemetery, but I don't know who she is, and you don't know either.
No, but Emma Karr there is a relation of Russell's, a cousin of his. That
would she have been someone on Sanibel?
I don't know.
It isn't one of the real old graves.
You better stop this business of burying anybody where they want to be in that. That woman that
Clara Strahan?
Yeah. They buried her without even asking anybody. And that ought to be put a stop to.
Yes, well, I'll tell you, there is a map of the cemetery.
Yes.
And it has my father's, the original one he must have made when he was there, but it has the graves marked out with numbers on it, and over here a key as to what number is what grave. Then there was a later one made, but there is a discrepancy in it because the one he made has somebody named Schultz, and I because this is my married name now,
Yeah.
it struck me, somewhere in the middle of the cemetery, and yet the later map has 5 graves over to the right of the entrance, very near to the entrance and to the parsonage. There are 5 graves in a row, and one of those says Schultz. So whether the little marker got moved or whether they just...
Well, now, did they ever contact Beulah to take care of that?
I don't know.
Beulah should have been the one, because she knew everybody in that cemetery.
Well, I think the one that my father made was back when Beulah was on the board, so
Well,
I think
now
his
that-
might have been right.
That is right. And that's bringing something to my mind. There was a contact between Alt and Beulah and me as to the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine...
Well, there, you know, it's funny, I saw this unrolled blueprint and I recognized my father's handwriting on it, his printing. And sure enough, it had his name, and I think the date on it said 1959 or something like that.
1959.
58 maybe, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that'd be about it.
And it was a plot of the cemetery with the graves in it. Now, I'm sure Beulah was around at that time.
Oh, yes.
And Charlie Alt never would have done that without conferring with someone like Beulah.
No,
But,
no.
but now this later one that was made, I don't know where these added names came from. They said Parker Mills had collected quite a few names. He kept track of the people who went in there, maybe later on when nobody else was paying much mind to it. So there is a record of some others, but there aren't too many. They did put Wilson Smith in there this winter.
Who's he?
Well, he
Oh,
lives
I
on
know,
Captiva.
yeah.
Yes, yes. But they have made a rule now that you must be a Captiva resident or a regular attendant at the chapel to be buried in there, because there are very few graves left. And you have to make a $200 donation to the...
Yeah, this
Church.
the woman that had inherited, you said her name on
Clara Strand?
Clara Strands. I told her, she came to me and I said, I'm not on the board or anything. But I said, you know, you're supposed to give a donation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, she would. She
Mhm.
never did.
I think she did in her will.
Oh,
I
did
think she left some money in her will. Yes,
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
yes.
Because I told her, I
Mhm.
said, we can't keep on taking care of that cemetery for
Right.
nothing.
And you know that somebody said that for a few years she would give an Easter donation of $25. So
Well,
there was a
more
little
credit
something
to her,
she did.
More credit to
Right,
her.
yes. But I remember my father saying the cemetery, there's no charge for being buried in the cemetery unless you care to make a donation toward its
But
upkeep.
that was at first.
At first.
We had to stop that.
That's right. It could have gotten out of hand and there wasn't that much
It
room
was
left.
getting out of hand after they built that parsonage and took up some of the land.
Right,
See, some of that land belongs to,
right. To the cemetery.
yeah,
Well, I think they would have been very wise had they bought enough of that land there where the Hempels and the Stoltzes, they could have bought that whole corner, and then if erosion carried the whole chapel away, they would have had a place to
and you can't sell that church. That,
to anybody now.
no,
No,
you can't, a church can't be that dishonest,
no,
even if they could get somebody to buy
to
it.
buy it, right.
We don't stand for that sort of thing.
Mm-mm. It's too bad you didn't prevail on that. It would have been very
Yeah, but,
businesslike of them to have bought other land to move
but
to.
what was that, general was here at that time?
Lindsay?
Yeah, he and the women, they did that whole thing.
They did.
And they didn't tell me, but they just as much as told me to keep my hands off.
of it.
And I never would have gone back if it hadn't been for Bill Stevenson coming on the board.
Mm-hmm.
He insisted that he wouldn't take it unless I did, because he said, you know more about it than I'll ever know.
Right.
But one of the funniest thing, you're not on that, you're not...
No.
one of the funniest things was Mary Bailey always played the organ, you know. And we came up to Easter time, about 3 weeks from Easter, and Beulah was the caretaker.
Beulah Wiles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she was drinking pretty bad. We all knew that. So Mary gets up, and this I never could overlook it. I forgive it, but I don't overlook it. Mary got up and she said, "This church has to be cleaned up before Easter." She said, "We're going to have to get somebody new," and so forth, and gave Beulah a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Beulah had always been kept on there because I felt that it gave her something to hold her head up about,
Mm-hmm.
and she needed it.
That was very sensitive on your part. She needed that.
She needed it.
Yes.
And boy, it made me madder than thunder. And I got up and I said, well, you know, there were years that we couldn't afford to have anybody clean up the church. And we went up there every 3-4 weeks and gave the place a cleaning. And I said, it wouldn't hurt us. This woman wasn't hired for life. She was hired by the year. And the year will soon be up, and you can do whatever you want to then.
Mm-hmm.
But don't slap her again down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just spoke right up, and can't think. She got up and she said, "And I agree with Susan."
Mm-hmm.
And we shut her up.
Mm-hmm.
But and I never forgave.
Mm-hmm.
I overlooked it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't.
Hurt a little bit.
Well, I think a church is to do good,
Right.
not to cut somebody down.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know that the next year they got her out of there?
They did.
And I think it was the cruelest thing that they ever did.
Was this after she lost the post office job? Or?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make any difference.
No, of course
That's
not.
when she needed help.
Right, that's when the church had to stand back of her and let her lean on the church a little bit.
And she was so proud of being on that board, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I never did forgive her. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
I had a terrible time. A woman that lived in your house. What was their names?
There was Ellis was the name of the people my folks
Yeah,
bought from. But next door, the Rows, Irene Rao.
She played the piano.
She lived next door, not in our house.
That's right.
Right.
She played the piano, and she and Mary got in a fight about the fella.
That sings?
Yeah,
Tony.
Tony. They got in a. She said that if she wasn't good enough to play for Tony, she couldn't play at all. She came to me. You lived up there, yeah. And I said, well, then you'll have to not play. We can't afford to let Tony go. The one thing, drawing card,
Mm-hmm.
and
He had a splendid voice.
oh, splendid, and he played for Mary, you know.
Yes.
And I said, then you'll have to go,
Mm-hmm.
because we can replace the pianist,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't replace Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in that position that we've got to have the money
Mm-hmm.
that comes in from more people coming.
Yeah.
And they had the awfulest fight you ever saw.
Is that when Mary became the
That's when
organ player?
And so Mary came to me at the same time. She lived right across from me, you know, up there.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she didn't know why she couldn't. And I said, well, I don't know why. Because every time it gets cold in that church, we didn't have the heat
Mhm.
now. You come either all bundled up with heavy socks on and looked like you were freezing to death, or you don't come because of it being cold. And I said, I can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have somebody that no matter what happens, they're there.
Right.
And she promised me that she would.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she never did break that.
After that, she just was. Yeah.
She came.
Yes.
And she was scared not to.
Mm-hmm. Of course, now we pay the organist.
Oh, sure.
And
I
it's
got
better.
her.
Yes,
You
and
know,
she's fine. We're lucky to have Julie.
I got her.
Yes. Yeah, you did.
Oh, yes. She was a friend of mine down here.
Yeah.
I was one that
She's excellent.
gave her the job.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's so many things that it sounds kind of braggy, but I don't mean it that way.
Of course not.
I don't.
No. But on the other hand, you can hardly talk about the early days here without your having not been
That's
heart
right.
and soul part of it.
And I had to be hard at times,
Of course.
but you don't dare let anybody know that you're being hard.
Right.
Because they'll take advantage. Somebody gets started, and now Mary never gave up. And that's why I said I didn't believe in the
Women's Lib?
no
No.
the honorary.
Oh, yes, honorary membership.
Now Mary was an example of that. She came every darn meeting, and she always had something to say.
Right.
Well, now she had no business to.
As an honorary member, it should
By
have
the
been.
way,
Yes.
I think that I should, and anyone else, I don't know who, anyone, Carl
Erler.
I think we should have not invitations, but notification of
Board
meetings.
meetings. You should.
I think we should. For instance,
Don't you?
never heard it, no.
I would think so. I know for a long time they did send them out, and Mary always came, and Carl said I wouldn't come for anything.
Bless his heart.
And you wouldn't come either anymore, would you?
I wouldn't unless we came, there was something
Special.
that I could help by knowing something about
Right.
something.
And I think if that came about, they'd soon see that you get there. But I'll see that you do get notices.
But I think they should.
Yeah, of course
I'm
you
not talking
should.
about me. I'm just talking about anybody.
Right.
Because suppose there's
It's a very empty gesture if they don't tell you when they're meeting.
I've never had any notice.
Well, I'll see that you get them.
And I shall, once in a while, I shall go.
Like to come. Well, I'll tell you, Lois Kessler is the secretary, and she will send out the notices, and I'll see that
Aren't
you
those
get put on
girls
the list.
nice?
Those are nice girls.
They are the nicest.
Yes,
Oh, I've got
they are
to,
a big addition to this community.
I've
And
got to go get over there and see Betsy.
I saw Betsy yesterday.
How was she?